Hey, do y'all remember that last video I made? I told you I would be, I told you about I was making a pretty big career move and I was gonna be doing this new brand deal with Level Rods. So right now I'm moving to a company called Level Fishing Rods. Now, if you're here in the Carolinas, you're probably pretty familiar with them. So this is my first draft of the signature series of rods that I'm building. If y'all ever shipped rods before, you know how sketchy it is. I hope they're all good. Shipping rods, let's see if they're all, there's 1, 2, 3, all those are intact so far. Shipping rods, 8 out of 10 rods that I ship always end up coming back broken. It looks like all 4 of these are good to go. Hey, but before we look at these rods, let's open this package. I'm curious to see, this is from Level 2. Usually, I'm hoping, I think, oh yeah, shirts and hoodies. All looks pretty cool. Let me know, you guys think I should get some of this stuff put on the website? Hey y'all, this is what you can expect from me from now on, since I'm now sponsored by Level. This is every tournament fisherman ever. Hold on, let me get dressed up here. These Level rods are so sensitive, I could feel my grandma choking on a chicken bone when she was at home and I was out here fishing. The fish in the brush piles, they swim out of my Level rods. I set the hook with my Level rods on the side of my boat where the Level rods is. You know, one thing about that Level rod is it really makes your hands feel like man hand. All right, that was a joke, but I do, I don't know. The stage speeches, as a fishing culture, we got to work on that a little bit. I feel like we got to work on it. Okay, seriously, y'all, back to these rods. So I've been working on these rods for quite some time now. I would say for about 3 months, because there's a lot of components too. There's a lot of stuff about fishing rods that you don't realize until you actually try to build one. There's one thing that I realized once I started working with Level and they gave me a few rods to test. I learned this one thing really, really quickly. And that is, we really didn't need new rods. I didn't have to start from scratch. In the beginning, we were thinking, oh, it's gonna have to send them a bunch of samples and it's gonna take a lot of time and it could be a year or 2 before we even get the first iteration of rods out. But after I started using the rods, there were already blanks that I was pretty impressed with. And we just needed to, there was like little bitty things that I wanted to change here and there. Nothing serious. Like just move a guide, take a guide away, add a guide, bigger guides, move the bait keeper, different reel seat, but the blanks themselves, I found quite a few blanks that I felt like could really be good for us. So take this rod, for instance. This is one that I'm actually repurposing into one of my signature series rods. We just changed a few small things. You would be surprised how big of a difference little things like that make in the balance of a rod and the way it performs and like a lot of different things. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, let's talk about this. So the first rod that I wanted to build, I knew for a fact that I'll probably encounter a little bit of pushback on this rod. This is why. This is the first one that I talked to him about making. But I knew there would be at least a little bit of pushback on it, and there's 2 of them. They're very similar. It's old technology. It's a product that not that many people understand unless they're really serious and really nitpicky about this technique. So I knew it's just not going to be popular. It's not lightweight. A lot of people like extremely light rods. It's not that sensitive. Who wants to make a rod that's not sensitive? That's just not something that somebody does and say, oh yeah, I don't want my rod to be sensitive. I know that's taboo. So I knew it would take a little convincing to get them to make these 2 rods. And so this is my first time touching my 2 crankbait rods. Now, if you follow me anytime, you know, I love cranking. Cranking is the technique that I lose a lot of sleep over when I catch fish cranking in a crankbait. I don't care if I finish 98, I'm going to go catch them on a crankbait. I just like doing that. It's my favorite technique. So I had them make 2 graphite composite cranking rods. And here they are right here. What are these rods for? Obviously, we're building rods around the techniques that I use the most and that I feel the most confident in. Like I'm not gonna build a big swim bait rod. I don't throw big swim baits that often. I'm not good at that. That's not something that I go to, but a crankbait, yes. Shakehead, yes. Spinnerbait, yeah. That's what I do a lot of. That feels really good, by the way. So 2 crankbait rods, graphite composite. The hard part about convincing a rod company to build it, it takes some education on the customer's end to know why we're building a rod that is a little less sensitive. Yes, it's a little bit heavier than a graphite rod. It is old technology, but in my opinion, it's the best rod that you can have for cranking. So Brian, what are these 2 graphite composite rods that you come up with? What are they for? I'm sure that's probably a question a lot of you guys are asking. Let's get out our handy dandy notebook. So I built 2 rods, right? A 6'10", 6'10" inch. I'm gonna call it a GP. Yeah, that's actually a good name. We probably should have thought about that. GP series, graphite composite. I like that. Sounds crafty, right? What is that rod for? So the 6'10" is probably a little bit more niche rod. That's something I'm going to throw small crankbaits with. Can you actually see that? We'll try to, just listen to me. If nothing else. Small crankbaits. That could be, Bass Mooch makes this little bait called a midge. The midge. You could throw a midge, you could throw a square bill, a balsa plug. You could throw a fritz side. Throw a fritz side crankbait. Any of those really small little crankbaits that can be kind of difficult to throw, a shad wrap, a number 5 shad wrap. Those little crankbaits that we like to fish in the wintertime, that's what that 6'10", I like the idea of calling it a GP. What do y'all think? But anyway, that's what that rod is for. Now, the 7.2 rod, built a 7'2". It's a medium heavy. It's a medium heavy power rod. I think we should call that one the GP too. We have a 6'10" GP and then a 7'2" GP. GP for graphite composite. Now, why I like graphite composite? I like the fact that it's not quite as sensitive. When you're using a crankbait rod, having one that's not quite as sensitive actually can work for you a lot of times. And also when you get one skin hooked, especially when you're fishing for largemouth, it just works for you to have a rod that doesn't have that. You want something that's got a little bit, I always explain it this way. I like a rod when I'm throwing a crankbait that's got a little bit of, That rod is gonna be for your chatterbait. Up to a 3/4 ounce chatterbait. That rod is gonna be for your lipless crankbait. When you're balling that lipless over a grass flat, 7'2". Your medium diving crankbaits. So your medium divers, I'm gonna put medium cranks, MD cranks. That's gonna be for baits like your rock crawlers, your Bill Lewis MR6s, any of those baits to get in that 6, 8, 10, 12 foot range, you won't wanna use nothing else. This next rod that I wanted to build, I felt very confident that we could get this past. It's a spinning rod. I like fishing spinning rods, but I'm very picky about my spinning rods. In my opinion, with a bait caster, you can have something that's halfway right and get away with it. But when it comes to spinning rods, dude, I'm super picky on it, and it's just gotta be right. We already had a blank that I feel like works really good. It's the right power and action, but there's a few things that I wanted to change. One thing that I wanted to change, I knew we would be able to get that done easily. Number one, what do we all use when it comes to a spinning rod? We almost all use braided fluorocarbon. Well, braided fluorocarbon, you're gonna have a union knot. When you have a union knot, you need a little bit more space. You need a little bit more freedom in your guides for that line to slip through the guides. I promise, it just works better. The second thing that I wanted to change, I felt like, one, it's a costly change, and if we don't do it right, it could mess up the whole balance of the rod. Now, this is the second thing I wanted to change, was this area right in here. This is our reel seat. Reel sets here. Notice I've got a lot more grip above the reel seat compared to this. Nothing above the reel seat. I prefer this style. I don't know what we call it. I call it a Euro. I'm not sure if that's the right, that's what I call it, a Euro grip. So I hold it here, reels down there, What it does is it gives me more leverage. My hands fatigue less over a long period of time. I feel like I've got more sensitivity. I just prefer to hold my spinning rods with my hand above the reel for leverage and fatigue and comfort purposes. So I knew I'd get a little bit of pushback on that because most of your high-end spinning reels are like this. Spinning rods are like this, but it costs a little extra. And I didn't know if we can do it and meet the price point that we wanted to do. So I was a little afraid that we might have some pushback on that. Okay, what is this spinning rod for? Everything. I can't think of a technique that you couldn't use this rod for. I've used it for Ned rigs. I've used it for shaky heads. I've used it for small swim baits, wacky rigs, all your forward-facing sonar baits. I've actually thrown crankbaits with it. I've thrown jerk baits with it. I've caught peacock bass with this rod, redfish, trout, spotted bass, smallmouth. I have caught a muskie on it, believe it or not. Catfish, caught a striper. This rod, this action, this power, this setup right here, this framework is the framework for the most versatile rod that you could ever have. If you're gonna get one rod, it's hard to do one rod, but I say two, one bait caster, one spinning rod, it's definitely gonna be this one. Look at this. You remember I talked about the guides? Remember I talked about the guides on the other rod? How I put, not the guides, I'm sorry, but the keepers. So with the keepers, I put, is it focusing? All right, put one keeper there, and we put one keeper here. That way you can alternate your keepers. One bait, you've got a crankbait, it's down here at the bottom. And one rod, you got a drop shot, it's here. And so now you don't have all that stuff in your rod box in the same area, just getting in a gosh doggone damn mess. So I'm going down the checklist. I got a good cranking rod that I like for every technique that I'll use for crankbaits. I got a good wacky rig, shaky head, got a good finesse gear rod going on. And so I thought to myself, what's next? So then I thought about this project. And I come up with the signature spinning bait rod, my guy. So then we decided to come up with this guy right here. This is gonna be my signature spinning bait rod. We didn't have to start from scratch on this one either. This rod, I'm gonna tell you what the base of this rod is. The base of this rod, the framework, is the NGX 7-foot heavy medium. The NGX 7-foot medium heavy rod. Only thing we did is just mess with the grip a little bit and put my logo on it. That's it. This rod is a bad dude. This is one of those rods where if I was stuck in the forest alone, no cars, no cell reception, and I had to try to survive, it would be that spinning rod and this one. I could catch a freaking barramundi with this. I think I could probably catch 3 sharks with a 7-foot rod. What would I use that rod for? It's just about anything that I could possibly think of. This could be for, number one thing is definitely gonna be for a spinnerbait. I'm gonna use it for a spinnerbait. I can also use it for, check this out. I can use this rod for a frog if I want to too, especially if it's an open water frog, hollow belly frog, I'll use it for that. I still will use this one for chatterbaits. And what I mean by chatterbaits, sometimes I throw a chatterbait like where I'm trying to skip it and place it real accurately, and that graphite composite is not the most accurate rod. But if I'm looking for something really accurate, then I'll use this rod because it's just, the way the rod unloads is a lot more controlled and I can place it a lot more precisely. What else could I use that rod for? I mean, a jig, you can use it for a jig. You can use it for flipping. I don't know. You could use it to get out of jail probably if you wanted to. 7-foot medium heavy power rod is a rod you can just use for too many techniques to really list. So these 4 rods that I just designed, these are the 4 prototypes. So you won't find them on the website or anything like that. But one thing I do plan to do is, you guys know I have the Straight Up Fishing app. And before they hit the streets, I am going to try to get a couple samples to let some of the guys within the Straight Up Fishing app try them as well. I would think of these rods like this. The NGX blank that Level has is a really, really good blank. It's affordable blank. It's lightweight. It's very sensitive. It feels good in your hand. And all I did with these Signature Series is take that blank and just put my own little twist on it, all the way down to the cork handle. Hey, y'all remember EVA? If y'all are old enough, if you're 40, 50 years old or older, you remember they tried to bring EVA foam, Bass Pro Shops did it back in the day, like 80s, early 90s, and nobody would accept it. And now it's hard to find a rod without EVA foam or the black foam grips. For some reason, I just feel like I wanted to bring back cork again. So all of the Signature Series rods, I'm going back to a cork handle. I just think for some reason it looks high end to me now. And I don't know. I just think cork is coming back. Cork is back. So with my Signature Series, I want to make an attempt to make cork great. Oh, I won't say that. I'll say that. No, I'm not gonna say that. Anyway, I'm going back to cork handles. Let me know what you think about the rods.